Before the world knew his name, before magazines called him a genius, before the titanium and carbon fiber miracles that let humans run faster than nature once allowed, there was only a boy who loved mountains more than anything. Hugh Herr grew up in the quiet fields of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, not a place where legends are expected to begin. His family wasn't wealthy, his house wasn't grand, and his life didn't feel destined for history. It felt ordinary, the kind of childhood where days stretch long and summer feels infinite. And yet from the moment he touched rock, something inside him woke up. He was small, thin, just another kid with messy hair and restless curiosity. But mountains didn't care about size. They cared about spirit, and Hugh had spirit to burn. By age 8, while other children traded baseball cards and played in schoolyards, Hugh stood at the base of cliffs that towered like ancient walls and whispered to himself, "I belong up there." He climbed with his hands and his heart, dirt under his nails. Scratches on his arms, knees scraped raw. Every height felt like a promise, every summit a vow. And soon he wasn't just climbing, he was conquering. By 14, he was one of the best young climbers in America. By 17, he was a prodigy, the kind the newspapers called fearless, the kind strangers expected to see at the Olympics of the wild. When he moved over rock, he didn't look human. He looked inevitable. But mountains, like life, can love you and take from you. And one winter morning in 1982, the mountain answered him back. Hugh and his friend Jeff Satry set out into the White Mountains of New Hampshire, a rugged, frozen wilderness famous for its savage winds and deep snow. This wasn't a practice route. This was real ice, real winter, real risk. But Hugh wasn't afraid. He never had been. Danger felt like a language he already spoke. They climbed with axes and crampons, ice crunching under steel, breath turning to fog. The world was white and silent, a cathedral of winter. But winter plays no favorites. And when the sky shifted, when the snow thickened and the wind twisted into something primal, the boys didn't panic. They did what climbers do. They kept going. Hours passed. Day bled into dusk, and then into cold. The kind of cold that doesn't hurt first. The kind that numbs. The kind that steals feeling before it steals life. When they realized they were lost, a quiet truth settled like snow. No one was coming for them. They dug into snow to shield from wind, huddled together, muscles trembling. Hugh stared at his hands. Hands that had clung to rock faces above worlds, hands that felt invincible. And he couldn't feel them. He couldn't feel his feet. He couldn't feel time. Night lasted forever, and then morning came, but rescue didn't. Only more snow. More wind, more silence. 2 days, 2 nights. 2 teenagers alone with death circling around them. By the time rescuers found them, frostbite had crawled through their flesh like ice shards under skin. Their legs were white and still. The cold had written its price into their bodies. Hugh was alive, but the boy who climbed mountains on 2 legs would never climb on them again. They didn't tell him right away. They didn't say, "You will lose your legs." Doctors spoke in soft voices, careful eyes, gentle tones that sounded like concern, but felt like pity. Hugh stared at the ceiling, feeling the numbness not just in his feet, but in something deeper, something he didn't know could go cold. Am I going to climb again? Silence. Tell me. They told him the truth in pieces, hints, pauses, careful fragments. And then came the words that split his life in half. We have to amputate both legs. Above the knee? Below? They didn't know yet. They only knew this. The frostbite had done what nature sometimes does to even the strongest. It had taken without mercy. Hugh closed his eyes. In his mind, cliffs faded into hospital walls. Mountains disappeared into fluorescent lights. His legs, the legs that had carried him up stone faces, across ridges, into sky, were dying. A climber was losing the thing that let him climb, and for the first time, he felt fear greater than any mountain ever gave him. Not fear of death, fear of becoming half alive. Days passed in slow motion. Visitors spoke softly. Machines beeped steadily. Nurses offered comfort he couldn't feel. His parents held his hands like something fragile enough to break under breath. And then, one morning he woke up, and his legs weren't there anymore. He reached instinctively for them. The way phantom pain drives a mind before. A body remembers truth, and felt only empty space and bandages. The world was quiet. Too quiet. He didn't cry. Not then. He only stared ahead, fists clenched, and made a silent promise. Not to walk again, not to climb again, but something stranger, something harder. This is not the end. I will not be a story of loss. I will build my future with my own hands. If I have to build my legs too. Most people would heal, learn, adapt. Hugh wasn't most people. He didn't want legs back. He wanted better ones. He didn't want to return to the world he lost. He wanted to build a new one where being broken wasn't the end, but the beginning. And in that hospital room, child body, genius mind, fury like fire in his chest, Hugh Herr decided something that would change not just his life, but the lives of millions. If the world couldn't give him legs, he would build them himself. Pain does not announce itself with thunder. Sometimes it arrives like morning fog, slow, cold, wrapping itself around every thought. For Hugh Herr, waking each day after the surgery felt like being reborn into a world designed to test him. Hospitals have a sound, the steady hum of fluorescent lights, soft shoes sliding across linoleum floors, the quiet rhythm of machines breathing beside beds, and beneath it all the whispers, doctors, nurses, visitors, speaking carefully around someone who has lost something irreplaceable. Hugh heard the whispers. Poor boy, such a tragedy. He'll never climb again. He stared up at the ceiling, jaw tight, listening to the world try to fit him into a box called pity. He did not belong there. He refused it the moment he heard it, but determination does not erase reality. Every morning there was the same shock, reaching down and finding nothing. Legs gone, body changed, identity shattered, anger replaced numbness. Not ordinary anger, but a white-hot force pressing against his ribs, begging to be released. Some days he hated the mountains for taking what they gave him. Other days he hated himself for trusting them, but the anger never won. It fueled him. 2 weeks after surgery, doctors strapped temporary prosthetics onto what remained of his legs. They were ugly, rigid, medical, made to let someone exist, not to let someone live. Cold metal, stiff joints, heavy straps that bit into skin. He stood, shaking, dizzy, teeth clenched, and the world tilted. Gravity felt cruel. Balance, once effortless, now felt like learning to stand at birth, except with the memory of flight. He fell, got up, fell again. And again, a nurse rushed to help him once. He waved her away. Falling was not weakness. Falling was tuition. Every bruise was a lecture. Every wince was a lesson. There is a moment in recovery when a person either becomes smaller than their pain or bigger than their fear. Hugh chose the second path. One morning, his mother found him sitting upright in bed, sketches scattered across blankets. Mechanical joints, adjustable hinges, curved forms, strange ideas that did not look like legs at all. "Hugh," she whispered. "What are you doing?" He did not look up. "I'm rebuilding myself, not healing, not adjusting, rebuilding." He studied mechanics the way he once studied rock faces, not as obstacles, but as puzzles begging to be solved. He asked engineers questions they didn't yet know how to answer. He asked doctors why legs had to imitate nature instead of improve on it. He asked the world why limitation had become acceptable. In rehabs and labs, in hallways and quiet corners, people whispered again. But the tone changed. Not pity. Curiosity. Who was this kid? He pushed through therapy, sweat streaming down his face, falling so many times that nurses began counting the falls instead of the steps, and then cheering when falls turned to strides. And then, one morning, he did something no one expected. He asked to go climbing again. They thought grief had broken him. They thought denial had replaced reason. They thought he was chasing ghosts of legs he no longer had, but Hugh did not ask permission from their doubt. He took back his place. His first day back at the climbing gym was silent. Not the curious silence from doctors, but stunned silence from climbers who once watched him move like gravity was a myth. He stood at the base of a climbing wall, wearing prosthetics built for walking, not scaling stone. The holds looked higher than ever. The walls loomed larger, and everyone wondered if this was the moment he finally surrendered. He reached for the first hold. His foot slipped, metal scraping plastic. The second hold, his balance wavered. The world watched, and then he climbed one move, then another, then another. He moved slowly, awkwardly, fighting his body on every shift. Sweat soaked his shirt. Pain shot through nerves, still learning they existed. And when he reached halfway up the wall, his arms gave out. He fell, rope catching him with a harsh snap. He dangled midair, chest heaving, but his eyes were burning with something electric. He shouted, loud enough to shake the gym, "I will climb again! Better than before!" People froze. It was not empty defiance. It was prophecy. Soon he realized something extraordinary. His prosthetic legs did not limit him. They freed him from the limits of human anatomy. A normal foot slips on tiny rock edges. His did not have to. A normal ankle bends, his could be locked. Normal toes crush under weight, his could be shaped like precision tools. He did not rebuild legs to match humans. He rebuilt legs to outgrow them. He became the first climber to invent legs that turned rock into opportunity, adjustable feet shaped like wedges, modular designs with steel claws for micro-holds, shock-absorbing pylons acting like tendons stronger than flesh, tools disguised as limbs, turning him into something the world had never seen, a human who upgraded beyond biology. At first, the climbing world whispered again, this time not out of pity but disbelief. Is it fair? Are those still legs? Is he one of us or something new? Hugh didn't argue. He climbed harder routes, steeper faces, impossible walls. He returned to the mountain that nearly killed him, Mount Washington. The same ice, the same wind, the same merciless winter. But he did not come as the boy who suffered there. He came as the man who chose rebirth. He climbed and reached heights doctors did not believe possible. Not despite his loss, but because of it. Still, victory alone wasn't enough. Climbing again filled the ache, but he felt something else growing, a responsibility. He began visiting amputee wards, hospitals, rehab centers. He sat beside children staring at the empty space beneath their blankets, the way he once had. He told them, your life is not over. You are not broken. You are unfinished. And that means you still get to build. For some, those words were oxygen. For others, the first spark after the dark. But Hugh knew his mission had outgrown the gym, the mountain, and even himself. The world didn't just need inspiration. The world needed transformation. Prosthetics were crude, outdated, pity-driven devices, designed to imitate flesh instead of transcend limitation. He could do better, he would do better. And so the climbing prodigy became a scientist. An inventor, a man who turned grief into blueprints and determination into biomechanics. He packed away climbing chalk and picked up textbooks. He traded rock walls for research labs. He exchanged harnesses for equations. And in quiet classrooms, surrounded by physics formulas and anatomy charts, a new chapter began, one even more ambitious than conquering mountains. He would redefine what it meant to be human. He would not accept a world where disability meant less. He would build a world where limitation could be engineered away, where legs were not lost, but redesigned, because he had proven one thing no one could doubt. Sometimes the strongest parts of us are built, not born, and Hugh Herr was just getting started. There comes a point in every life where survival is no longer enough, where simply existing feels like a betrayal of the fire in your bones. For years after losing his legs, Hugh Herr climbed not just mountains, he climbed back into himself. He learned balance, learned pain, learned metal and motion the way others learn language. But the world is not changed by those who only rebuild themselves. It is changed by those who rebuild reality for others. And so, in lecture halls and labs, under flickering library lights and chalkboards full of equations, Hugh rewrote fate. He did not come to college as a disabled student seeking accommodation. He came as a scientist in the making, a revolutionary disguised in humble clothes. Walking on tools he built with his own hands, students around him solved problems on paper. Hugh solved problems in flesh and steel. He studied physics because biology felt too slow. He studied biomechanics because nature seemed unfinished. He studied robotics because he believed humans were not complete. We were prototypes. Late nights became early mornings. His notebooks filled with sketches of motors and tendons, electric impulses and feedback loops. He believed legs should think, feet should sense. Prosthetics should not be strapped on. They should become part of you, responding like muscle, predicting like instinct. Most people dream of walking. Hugh dreamed of dancing, running, climbing higher than flesh ever could. And then came the letter, acceptance to MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. A cathedral of minds where impossible ideas are currency and the future is whispered before it arrives. Hugh did not walk into MIT. He arrived like a storm. He was not just a student. He was a man chasing destiny with a soldering iron and fury in his chest. He asked questions no one had asked. Why should prosthetics copy biology instead of surpass it? Why should disability mean limitation? Why should loss mean less? In the night glow of labs, he built limbs that responded to motion sensors, sockets that hugged nerves instead of crushing bone, microprocessors that translated thought into movement. Traditional prosthetics were wooden boxes with hinges. Hugh's designs behaved like living tissue, carbon fiber struts, robotic joints, sensors that listened to muscle whispers, actuators mimicking tendons, not legs that tried to be human, legs that made humans more than they were before. He tested prototypes on himself first. Every failure bruised his skin. Every success lifted his spirit. Bleeding, sweating, tightening screws, redefining the boundaries of body and machine. He became the frontier where anatomy met innovation. And soon, the world noticed, not with applause, but with disbelief. Newspaper headlines read, "Amputee climber redefines mobility. Boy without legs builds better ones. Science or superhuman." Television anchors spoke his name. Labs asked to follow his research. Patients wrote letters by the hundreds, stories of people who once believed life stopped at amputation, now awakened by hope. Hugh did not smile at fame. He only nodded, turned back to his desk, and kept building. There was so much left to do. One day, a soldier walked into the lab, young, strong, uniform crisp, eyes haunted. He had lost both legs in combat. Doctors told him life would be different, quieter, smaller. Hugh looked at him, not with sympathy, but with recognition, the kind only those who have been reborn understand. "Do you want to walk?" Hugh asked. "Or do you want to run?" The soldier didn't answer at first. His jaw trembled, his eyes burned. He whispered, "I want to be who I was." Hugh shook his head. "No," he said softly. "You will be more." Months later, that soldier ran across an indoor track on robotic limbs designed from Hugh's vision. Every footfall struck the floor like thunder. Each step was a rebellion. Scientists cried. Nurses clapped. Cameras rolled. But Hugh stood silently, hands in pockets, eyes glimmering, as if watching a prophecy unfold. It was not the first miracle, and it would not be the last. Patients arrived from hospitals, from battlefield wards, from accident sites and childhood tragedies. They came with wheelchairs, with crutches, with scars on their bodies and fear in their eyes, and Hugh gave them futures. He built limbs for children who grew, designs that adjusted with their height. For athletes, he invented curved running blades, limbs that would race in Paralympic stadiums across the world, limbs that would spark debates about whether technology had surpassed biology. For elderly amputees, he created feet that eased pain instead of trading one burden for another. For wounded mothers, fathers, workers, students, he returned autonomy, pride, motion, life. When one of his patients walked without pain for the first time, he didn't say thank you. He said, "I forgot what this felt like. To move without thinking." That was Hugh's victory. Not applause, not headlines. A quiet sentence whispered in relief. He understood something profound. Prosthetics were not tools. They were identity, dignity, freedom. Years later, Hugh stepped onto a TED stage, not as a climber, not as a survivor, but as a visionary. Cameras focused on him, lights warm on his face, the world waiting. He told his story, not in tragedy, but in rebellion. He spoke of mountains and ice, of loss and steel, of pain and determination. He lifted his pant legs and revealed the robotic limbs beneath, gleaming like something forged between science and destiny. And then he said a sentence that traveled across the globe, replayed in classrooms, labs, hospitals, military bases, rehabilitation centers. A sentence that fractured history into before and after. Human limitation is a fault of our imagination, not our bodies. The room erupted. People cried. The world changed. For the first time in history, disability was not framed as a deficit, but as an upgrade path, a frontier, a future. Hugh's research expanded. He built the MIT Center for Extreme Bionics, where minds like his came together, refusing to accept the boundaries evolution left unfinished. He pushed for policy that recognized prosthetic limbs as a human right, not a luxury. He fought insurance systems, challenged medical standards, rewrote textbooks. His inventions entered hospitals worldwide, knees that think, ankles that adjust, feet that learn. He married, had daughters, taught them that strength is not measured in muscle but in resilience and imagination. And some nights, after tucking them into bed, he would stand outside and look at the stars over the mountains he once climbed. The same mountains that took his legs and gave him purpose. He did not hate them anymore. Pain had become blueprint. Loss had become language. Suffering had become science. And he had become proof of an idea so radical, so powerful, that it changed the future. A body is not what makes us whole. A spirit is. And when spirit leads, technology follows. Today, millions walk because Hugh Herr refused to stop climbing. Soldiers dance with children again. Athletes sprint on carbon wings. Mothers lift babies with prosthetic arms that feel like flesh. Kids who once sat in hospital beds now run playgrounds, laughing on legs that bend because he dreamed them into existence. The world calls him the Bionic Man. But titles don't matter. What matters is this: he was broken and chose to build. He lost and turned loss into liberation for others. He fell and taught humanity how to rise with machines that moved like miracles. Not everyone is born whole. Not everyone stays whole. But we are not defined by what we lose. We are defined by what we build from the pieces. And Hugh Herr built a world where disability is not an ending. It is the beginning of a new kind of human.